Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is Hunter from Mountain Ash Photography. Join me in a video today as we're going to be exploring inside a PixInsight of a brand new tool with the latest released from Pleiades Astrophoto, as we do have now version 1.9, also codenamed as Lockhart, and there is a brand new tool inside of this new version that I had to do a video for, because if you are living in an area that has a lot of light pollution and has to deal with gradients, this tool is going to be a big time saver for you, especially for those who are not the absolute greatest and have some troubles at times dealing with dynamic background extraction. But this new tool is going to change how you do your workflow here with this latest version. So where to get the latest version of PixInsight? You just have to go over to your account on the pixinsight.com website, and you will find down here in the installation files version 1.9.0. You have the Windows version, you have the Mac OS version, and even Linux. You're going to make sure you're going to download and install this onto your computer, but also while you're here as well, you might as well download this brand new database, because you are going to be needing this to be able to use this brand new tool. And this is the Mars database files. There's two in particular. One is about 1 gig and the other one is about 134. Now the differences between these are sky surveys, kind of like what you have to download for the Gaia database to kind of do some image plate solving for. This is a kind of similar thing, but this is mostly used for this gradient correction tool now that we have. So a little bit about the Mars project. Is also an acronym for Multi-Scale All-Sky Reference Survey. It's a brand new thing that is being done here over the next about 1 to a year and a half, and it's already been completed so far of the northern hemisphere for the winter sky. So right now it's perfect time to use it as we trend back towards the summer months. With these observatories, they're kind of doing a little bit of some more sky surveys out there, but this is all dedicated to help with the gradient corrections, since they are dealing with focal lengths of 35 and 135 millimeters in about a span of 100, well, about 1.5 years. So that's just a little bit of, the kind of background of the Mars project. So you want to be sure that you download both of those, the databases and the new update. And we're going to go ahead and head into PixInsight now. So the tool in question we are going to be using, you can find that under Processes, All Processes, and it is called Multi-Scale Gradient Correction. Now, this is where you're going to load in your Mars database here. Make sure you click that checkbox and you add the file of the Mars database that you have. There is two of them. One is the user one, which is a smaller database of everyday, amateur astrophotographers have contributed to this. And then you have the main database, which covers, a much broader scale in the sky. So you're going to go ahead and load those right in. And the one that we are going to be using is the top one here, DR1-1.0.3. That is the reference image we are going to use. So we're going to go through a couple of examples. We're going to go from easy kind of gradients to some of the most extreme gradients that you have, just to kind of put this as a stress test for this tool here. And you're also going to be using another new tool as well, and you kind of can do this in place of your dynamic background extraction, which is usually the first thing that you would tackle when you stack your image before you start going into the processes. So we're going to put this off to the side here. I'm going to make it as a little bit of a process so it's a little bit easier for us to find. So the first one we're going to work with is my latest capture of LBN 777, which is also known as the Baby Eagle Nebula. So you can see with the background here, we do have some gradients over towards the left and the right. So it's not too terribly bad in general. So one of the first things that you have to do is figure out the overall flux of your image, which with this tool here, you have to make sure you go over towards processes, all processes, and find something known as spectrophotometric flux calibration. This is kind of similar to, SPCC, but this is to kind of gauge the brightness of the overall stars. So for this, my QE curve, since I use a ZWO ASI 2600 camera, which uses the IMX571, I'm going to select that. Now, the gray filter really depends on what kind of filter did you use. For me, one-shot color camera, I was using the Optolong L Quad Enhance. So your gray filter, you just have to kind of search down for it. And eventually down the line, you'll be able to find it, Optolong L Quad Enhance. For the red, green, and blue filters, same ordeal like if you were using SPCC. You find it for the red, the green, and the blue channels. And just go ahead and drag and drop that over. But you got to make sure that you have the Gaia databases for DR3/SP as well for this process to work. And you have to make sure that your image is plate solved as well. So we're going to let it do its thing, and it's going to come up with a graph. And there we have it. We have, the calculations of the flux calibration. Of course, there's going to be some wings in the low end and the high end, which could be indicative of stuff that's kind of around, the outsides of the image, or even some variable stars. But here in the middle of these graphs is what the calculations are going to be used for this. So once you have that done, now we can open back up our process for multi-scale gradient correction, and you're just going to keep kind of everything the same. Gray filter, LRGB for this, and here is the magic working. This is a very easy process. You don't have to, make points all along your image or get rid of the stars so you have a starless image to work on the background. This works as is, and all you got to do is just drag and drop and let it do its thing, and you're going to be thankful and absolutely blown away at the results that this comes up with. So it's a very fast process like that. You are left with a gradient model, so you can kind of gauge to see, what is the gradients that it got out. If you want to see a little bit more of a smoother kind of aspect, and there you go. There is the gradients that are removed. And when we're looking at our image here, we'll kind of go back and forth with this. You see, this is the before, and this is the after. All the gradients are gone. This is so much easier than trying to kind of, do multiple runs, especially if you're dealing with a worse gradient with, DBE and some of the auto dynamic background extraction processes that are out there. This just, makes it so much easier, and we're left with a nice flat field. So that's just how simple it is. So this one wasn't too bad overall, especially with the gradients, but we are going to be getting progressively worse over time. So the next image we're going to work on is an ultra wide field view that I did, a broadband that includes the Ghost of Cassiopeia, the ET cluster, and the Pac-Man. And you can see we have vignetting, we have some pretty strong gradients as well. This was also kind of during the time of like a half moon for the most part, and even some light pollution. So we're going to do the same exact thing here. We're going to start off by getting the spectrophotometric flux calibration. Use the same filter over, so let it do its thing to get the calculation. There we go. There's our flux calibration, as you see on the RGB scales. Head back over to our multi-scale gradient correction. Drag and drop over. We take a look at what the gradients were taken out of this image here, and you can see the very hard gradient here on the left-hand side. And then now we look at our image. Look at the difference between the before and the after. Gradients are completely gone. you can actually start to see a lot more of the nebulosity too. We haven't even gone further into the processes of doing, blur exterminator and all that kind of stuff. It's like magic with this new tool. And this was a little bit more harsh too with the gradient, especially dealing with vignetting and a little bit of some light pollution as well. But you can see here in the corners, it didn't fully quite get all of it, but it's done a pretty darn good job overall, which what you can do to completely correct that is going in towards your processes and heading over to background neutralization. You can go ahead and find, a portion of your image here that is, pretty flat with, the background itself. You could just make a little bit of a preview window. Just could do a small one like that. And then head over to your region of interest, select the preview window, and then just drag and drop over towards the background. And sometimes, it makes it better or it makes it worse. You just kind of have to judge on, the processes that you want to use and the results that you have. So there we go. There's that one there. We're going to go over towards the next one here, which is an ultra-wide field view of Messier 45. And we're going to, do our unlinked stretch here. And you can see the vignetting is a little bit stronger as well here on the corners. You can see some light pollution. Here in the center is not too terribly bad too, because this is an extremely wide fielded view and a very undersample image because of using the Rokinon 135 with the APS-C camera. So we're going to go right back in towards the spectrophotometric flux calibration. Drag that right over. Let it do its... There we go. Our flux calibration is done. Head back over towards the multi-scale gradient correction. Drag the triangle over. Let it do its thing. There we have. Here is the gradient that it took care of. Very strong on the left-hand side of the gradient model. And we're looking at this. Did a pretty darn good job. For the most part, we do have a little bit of some vignetting still left over in the immediate corners there, which, not that big of a deal. But looking at the before and the after, huge difference overall. You just have to do a little bit. You can either do some cropping or, like I mentioned, using the background neutralization tool to fix those corners. So that one's done. Let's head over to this one here. This is a narrowband image of the Spaghetti Nebula. And you can see we have a lot of strong greens here over on the bottom left. This was during a pretty strong moon at about, 70% towards the end of the data, the data set. So go back over towards, our filters here. So this is where things get a little bit different for this one since we use narrowband. This, I use the Optolong L Ultimate. So I'm going to go ahead and find that in the list here. Go over and find the RGB channels of this. We'll go ahead and drag and drop that over to calculate the There we go. We got our flux calibration for this. Head right back over to multi-scale gradient correction and go ahead and drag and drop it over. Here's our gradient model of what the gradients took out here. You can see there was a ton of color gradients here in this image. And now look, we have a nice flat image all the way across, the before and the after. You can see we had a bit of, detail inside of here that was washed out by the gradient. But then when we put multi-scale gradient correction on, we can actually start to see a lot more of the wispies inside of the supernova remnant. So this done an extremely good job on this. Now it seems like I have to go back and, reprocess all of my images now because of this. So I got one more example for you, and this is going to be the stress test. Reason being, for this image here, I was doing NGC 891, also known as the Outer Limits Galaxy, and this was during a pretty bright moon, and the moon was very close by. As you can see, there is a very, very strong gradient with this image here. And while I was processing, trying to do, some DBE for this, and just trying to have, the wide view of it, did not work out as well. So we're going to try and using this new gradient tool to see if we can actually make this gradient go away. So right back into the process here, spectrophotometric flux calibration. We're going to go back to use our filter, which is the L Quad Enhance. The red filter portion, the green, and the blue. Go ahead and let it run. All right, we got our flux calibration here. Now, let's see if this tool can get rid of this extremely harsh gradient. So, let's see some magic here. All right, here is our gradient model here. As you can see, very, very harsh gradient overall down here in the corner. So what did it do for the image itself? Actually, a lot better than I expected for the most part. There is a little bit of like a gradient here. It might be hard to see from the YouTube's compression, but this is actually pretty darn good, and I'm impressed from what it was before to now. I mean, I can live with this. This is much better than what it was. We're going to try, do some very quick processing for this one here, because I want to be able to actually see if this actually got rid of it. So we're going to do a little bit more of some, background extraction and stuff like that, or even just run this a second time and see what happens after it's got rid of the very harsh gradient beforehand. Let's see what happens if we do another run of this. See if the image improved any at all. So looking at the gradient model in itself, and looking at the before and the after, and yeah, it actually improved it even more. So I think now we just got to do a little bit of some background neutralization. I'm going to find a nice preview area, probably like right here. That looks pretty good for this image here. So I'm going to do it from the preview window. And then we're going to go ahead and do that. So here we go. Yeah, and doing right after just a simple stretch here. Look how good this looks. Now, it's not absolutely perfect. You still have to kind of work in a little bit for this one. But this is also an extremely, stress situation for this tool to try and compensate between a very bright moon and the close proximity of this super gradient. But a lot of people are going to be kind of dealing with this problem here, especially when they're doing from super light polluted areas or during very strong moonlit nights. But this is an absolute improvement from what this was, because before I only could be able to get in a zoom like this just to kind of focus in on the galaxy, but there's still, hidden galaxies all around in the background for this image. I had to just throw out because with DBE, it just was not cutting it. So this is the brand new tool, Multi-Scale Gradient Correction, free update from PixInsight. Go ahead and download it. It is going to change how you do dynamic background extraction. Can we actually get rid of fully of DBE? Not quite, but I am going to be using this much more often. So I hope this video helps on how to use the brand new tool for PixInsight with this brand new update. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Love doing tutorials like this. We do have, some affiliate links out there as well if you plan on trying to buy a little bit of some, last minute gifts for people or even for yourself coming over for the holidays. It just helps me out a little bit as well, give a little bit of an incentive for kind of, branching out for these companies here. Also, I have a print store for all your astrophotography needs, 3D printed stuff for the Seastar, and with the Seastar S30, I do have a couple of items now available for sale as the S30 is now beginning to ship from areas like Agena Astro, and also I have some other stuff for, coming from Bahtinov Mascus, from diffraction spikes, some other accessories too for ASI Air and ZWO products going forward. So be sure to check that out at Alton Astro Prints. Clear skies, everybody. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.